So, yeah, this is the second Hobbit film. Now, before its release, we all assumed that this would be the last part in the series, and eventually it was announced that this movie would be split into 3 parts, much to many people's dismay. And while I agree that this movie was obviously an unnecessary way to make more money in another movie, this really turned out to be not that bad. But welcome back, everyone. I'm Matt, and this is Blockbuster Bombshell. So instead of picking things up right where we left off, we're shown a bit of an unnecessary flashback a year before the events of the first movie, in which Gandalf and Thorin meet up at a pub to discuss plans for taking back the Lonely Mountain. To which Gandalf decides a stealthy burglar is what they need the most. Jump cut to 1 year later, and Bilbo has eyes on Azog and his crew, hunting him and the dwarves down along with an abnormally large bear. So Gandalf makes them all run for it to a shelter where a man named Beorn lives. Soon enough, they find out that the bear that was trying to kill them is actually their host, Beorn. Possibly one of the manliest looking characters of the whole frickin' movie series. Anyway, the dwarves need to get to the Mirkwood Forest quickly and ask for horses from Beorn, to which he replies,
I don't like dwarves, but orcs I hate more.
Then we get a scene featuring our favorite orc, Azog, as he talks with a mysterious dark shadow that orders him to stay and put together some army. So instead, Azog sends out his good buddy,
Borg!
to finish the hunt for the company of dwarves without him. Anyway, they make it to Mirkwood and ditch the horses. Gandalf finds some writing and gets a message from Cate Blanchett to peace out and do another Lord of the Rings reference, which is actually better than the book because Gandalf kind of comes in and out when he's needed in the book without real explanation. Of course, before he leaves, Gandalf is like,
Do not leave the path you're on, or you're screwed.
To which they leave the path and go on some trippy bath salt-like journey through the forest. Seriously, they get more lost than a stoner in the middle of 7-Eleven. Dude, should I get the Cheez-Its or the Twinkies? So Bilbo decides to do the smart thing and get above ground to see where their progress is at, but then realizes he's left 13 completely stoned dwarves down in the middle of a giant spider-infested forest, and they all get kidnapped. Bilbo saves them by using the magic ring he found in the Misty Mountains and slays the spiders while they scream in agony. In the midst of fighting the giant bugs, he drops the ring and realizes why Gollum was the way he was when he found him. In this one scene, you can clearly see that on his face. The rest of the dwarves are swarmed by the last of these giant spiders and are rescued by another movie-generated character named Tauriel and the Lord of the Rings reference Legolas, who has a short banter with the father of the character who will eventually spend 3 films with walking around and fighting orcs.
What is this horrid creature? A goblin mutant.
That's my wee lad, Gimli.
Of course, Legolas doesn't like dwarves and takes them all in as prisoners, to which we run into King Thranduil, who is the main source of Thorin's racism of elves. They have a bit of an argument because Thranduil was there the day Smaug took the mountain and seemingly didn't help Thorin and his family out. So it seems that Thorin's anger towards elves may be justified, until Thranduil shows off his own scars brought upon him by a dragon and sends them all to an eternity of imprisonment. Meanwhile, Bilbo, having not been captured, devises a plan for them to escape, bringing them down to the wine cellar and stuffing them into wine barrels. Their dramatic escape leads to an epic sequence of orc versus elf versus dwarf action, and it's pretty well done. Keely, dwarf number 4, manages to get his ass shot by some poisonous arrow before they make their dramatic escape down the river. Having captured one of the orcs, Thranduil gets a bit of an unexpected Hobbit 3 spoiler and cuts the head off of the perpetrator, only to leave Legolas a bit confused. Of course, to keep Orlando Bloom involved in the movie, Tauriel decides to help the dwarves in their quest, and because Legolas is a lovesick puppy, goes with her. Then we catch up with Gandalf, who invites the 5th Doctor to a meeting at an awkwardly placed tomb, only to reveal that it's another irrelevant Lord of the Rings reference. Jeez, I don't even think the Star Wars prequels spent this much time talking about the original trilogy. Alright, so Gandalf finds a hidden horde of orcs and manages to run into none other than the main villain from the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Why is he here? Is he even gonna do anything? Oh, okay, well, so they capture Gandalf I guess that's relevant enough. Moving on. The company runs into the Orlando Bloom lookalike named Bard and offer to pay him to smuggle them into Lake Town, to which he reluctantly accepts. Of course, it's not easy to sneak 13 dwarves and a hobbit within a populated area like Lake Town, and eventually they are all caught when trying to take weapons from the armory. Confronted by the master of Lake Town, Thorin reveals his identity and offers a share of the gold in return for letting them pass to the mountain. They also didn't seem to take into account how they were actually going to get rid of the dragon. They just assumed, hey, we're getting free gold, let's do it. In the midst of this, Bard becomes the reasonable one and is called out for being the ancestor of a legendary warrior who ruled the city from the first film, and created the one thing capable of killing the dragon. In the morning, 4 dwarves are left behind while the rest head off to the mountain. After traveling so far to reach the secret door, they practically give up the very moment they run into trouble. Thankfully, Bilbo is there to figure out what they're actually supposed to do with the door, and they all make it inside. Then comes the moment of truth. The reason why Bilbo is there in the first place. To basically take on a giant fire-breathing monster for a chance at making less than 15% or so of the gold that resides in the mountain. He's a cheap date, that Bilbo. Anyway, he's sent to look for the Arkenstone, the glowy rock from the first movie that I guess gives Thorin ownership of the mountain. I guess his actual heritage doesn't really take into effect in this situation. I don't know. In the process of looking for this, as the old dwarf put it, white gem, Bilbo accidentally wakes up Smaug, who turns out to be way, way bigger than described. Oh shit, 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 oh shit. So like any other person waking up to find an intruder in your bedroom, Smaug makes some textbook threats, and I have to say, they're really terrifying. Before long, the magic ring works against Bilbo, and eventually he reveals himself. Thankfully, Bilbo seems to be able to talk his way out of anything. The two have a bit of a dance within the mountain. He boasts about being the most badass dragon ever, and something about being allied with the Dark Force. Yeah, whatever. I'd like to see him fight the new Godzilla. That guy's huge. Bard, clearly paranoid as all hell, tries to unveil a black arrow in case the dragon decides to take out its anger on the city, to which he's arrested for no good reason. His son, however, manages to put the black arrow in a completely safe place, the inside of someone else's boat. Good job, son. While Keely suffers from the poisonous arrow, a small group of orcs track them down and attack, only for Tauriel and Legolas to jump in and fight them off in the nick of time. There is some pretty well-paced action, and in the end, absolutely no payoff.
Ha ha! See you in the sequel, loser!
Then Tauriel heals Keely, and they cement an otherwise completely pointless romance into the film. Back at the mountain, the dwarves do a ridiculously awesome chase around the mountain while Smaug attempts to burn them all alive. They manage to use the dragon's frustrated burst of molten fire breath to light up the forge and melt some gold, to which you find out was to pour on Smaug, effectively killing the dragon once and... Nah, just kidding. He gets up just fine and way more pissed off than before. And because he thinks that the people of Lake Town are partially responsible for this invasion of his home, he decides to pay them all a fiery visit. And that's where the film ends. No, really, the film just ends with Bilbo like this.
What have we done?
Okay, so hear me out on this one, because so far in this trilogy, I find this film to be the strongest so far. It's well paced, despite even more Lord of the Rings references included, and it just features a lot more events from the story than the last one. As a matter of fact, it's a little closer to the book than the first one in my opinion. I mean, you have Beorn the Skin Changer, then the spiders, the wood elves, the barrel fight, the lake town, and eventually the dragon. If this were the first part of a 2-part movie series, I would have been satisfied. Even if the beginning was told in flashback from the first part, it would still be a good movie, at least to me. Plus, Bilbo as a character really shines now that he's got the ultimate weapon of burglary. While in the subtext is pretty malicious, the ring actually gives Bilbo the advantage to accomplish the goals that he needs to be a valuable hero in the film. He's come very far from being the snobby homebody from the first film, and it does show if you pay attention to his mannerisms throughout the movie. Not to mention the scene with Smaug really sets the tone for me. I mean, I'd probably crap myself as soon as I had realized I had woken him. Who's to say Bilbo didn't already? I've heard that people are drawn down the middle with this one, and I find that to be a shame, because this is really a much better film than the first one. I mean, you have a lot more going on, and the characters noticeably change as the film progresses. And when I mean characters, I'm talking about Bilbo and the dwarves. These are the people we are seeing the story through. Legolas has his own trilogy of movies to develop, and who really cares about Tauriel? Bard and the other Lake Town peeps have one more film to develop, and even if they don't, it's not really their story anyway. Something you have to keep in mind when watching films with so many characters. It's the ones that matter that are the ones you have to pay attention to, the ones who have taken you on this adventure with them. Anyway, that's part 2 of this series. There will be a part 3 eventually, but maybe if you guys want, I can just do a brief no-spoiler video featuring trailer footage about what I think of the third movie while it's still in theaters. If you like this video or agreed with me on some level, give the video a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe for more episodes to come. If you have any ideas on what other blockbuster movies you want me to talk about, or just general detailed opinions on why you loved or hated this movie, feel free to comment. Remember, you're only entitled to your opinion if you can express it in great detail. So have at it. All opinions are welcome. After all, it's just a movie. And until next time, I'm Matt, and this has been Blockbuster Bombshell.